everyone out there, welcome to my channel. I am Dory, I am a teacher of English, and today I will talk about unknown vocabulary in reading. As you can tell, the more vocabulary you know, the better, that's obvious, and also it really makes you feel much more confident, which is always a good thing and helps a lot. But what do you do if you do not know a word? Well, let's be realistic. You can't possibly know all the words that exist. There will always be words that you don't know, especially in academic reading. In an academic reading text, even a native speaker might not know all the words in it. So the secret is not to get stuck with words so much. Be calm, even if these words are shown in the questions too. Here are some tips to help you deal with this problem as effectively as possible. Tip number 1. I'm sure you already know this, but I might as well repeat it because it's actually very important. Okay, so there's a word you don't know. What do? Don't panic. Just try to understand the meaning of the word by the other words that surround it, by the context, as we say. For example, this is an extract of what could be an academic reading text, but the logic is the same for a general IELTS reading text or for any kind of reading actually, so please keep up with me. Let's read. As far as the global warming and the greenhouse effect are concerned, there is no room for compromise, Dr. Jones stated when he was asked about the environmental deterioration and its consequences to people. So, let's just say that you don't know, in this paragraph over here, you don't know the word deterioration. You don't know what it means. But you have to kind of know what it means because there is a task question based on this issue over here, so you should know what this word means. Let's just say that phrases like there is no room for compromise and words like consequences to people, which when we say consequences, we usually mean something bad. What are the consequences of this? Okay? So, these kind of phrases, no room for compromise, and what are the consequences? And, well, suppose we're not familiar with this kind of phrases, global warming and the greenhouse effect, which are very, very important for our planet and negative oriented, but let's just say we're not familiar with these terms over here. Only no room for compromise and the consequences to people make us believe that deterioration cannot mean something good, and probably is something that the environmental deterioration and its consequences to people, then probably deterioration means something that it's getting worse and worse every day, that it is declining in quality, it decays, and things like that. So, in this way, we have determined more or less the meaning of deterioration without even knowing the word. Now, let's just say that we know what the word deterioration means, but we don't know what the word compromise means over here. Again, since deterioration is something that is getting worse and worse every day, and there is no room for something, we don't know what compromise means, but there is no room for it because environment is deteriorating every day and its consequences are really bad probably to people. So I'm assuming that we're not familiar with these terms, that's why I do not use them, but if you're familiar with these terms it would be even more, it would be even easier to understand it. But anyways, then probably compromise might mean there is no room for excuses anymore, for spending or better yet, wasting time. So, here we go. We kind of understood the meaning of words we don't know just from the context and the information we get from it. Compromise, of course, does not mean excuse here, but what I want to show you is that you don't have to know the exact meaning of a word in order for you to understand what a paragraph says in general and be able to answer the questions, alright? Tip number 2. Syntax. Syntax can also really help you define the meaning of a word. Okay, let's just see an example about syntax now. This is another extract. So we read, if governments internationally insist on avoiding the discussion over environmental matters, I don't think that ecologists and environmental activists all over the world will ever tolerate or condone that. Okay, so now let's just say that you don't know what the words tolerate or condone mean. Let us see if we can find out more or less their meaning with the help of the syntax. Now, if we see phrases like insist on avoiding, insist on something, if governments internationally insist of something, I don't think that ecologists all over the world and blah 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 will ever do something, we don't know what that means, or do something else, we don't know what that means. I don't think that ecologists will ever do that or that if governments insist on something. So the syntax itself guides us through to believe that tolerate or condone probably means something like will ever accept something like that. More or less, the meaning will be something like that. So even if we do not know two or more words, it doesn't really matter. Even if we do not know the meaning of words, the syntax itself in the paragraph can guide us through, to understand the meaning of these words. Tip number 3. This is my favorite one. When my students ask me for unknown words while they practice on reading texts, I really don't like answering these kind of questions because they're never going to learn new vocabulary in this way, for one. And after all, I'm not going to be there on the day of the exam with them, and of course they are not allowed to have a dictionary with them. So what do? I like to answer these kind of questions with a little game of mine that I find really effective. So when they ask me what does that word mean, I like to answer, well, I don't know, is it a word with a positive or with a negative meaning? Before you say, how am I supposed to know? I don't know the word. I tell you that there are ways through which you can understand if a word has a positive or a negative meaning without knowing the word per se. And you know what? Sometimes, not always, but quite often, all you need to know in order to answer a question is actually the negative or the positive meaning of a word. That makes all the difference in the meaning, in a general meaning of a paragraph. Okay, as we saw in the previous examples, the words that surround the unknown words, the context, as we like to say, and the syntax too, help us to define if a word has a positive or a negative meaning really effectively. For example, we came to the conclusion that deterioration has a negative meaning only due to the words that surrounded it and the syntax of it, okay? There are other ways in which you can understand if a word has a positive or a negative meaning, and this way is the prefix. The prefixes of the words really help you understand if this word is negative or positive. For example, here, let's just say that you find these kind of prefixes before the word, at the beginning of the word. Un, unhappy, for example. Mal, malfunction. Ir, irresponsible. Il, for example, illegal. Ig, ignorant. In, inability. I am, impossible. Dis, dysfunction. Displeasure. We also have deactivate. I don't know if I can actually write that way, but anyway, you get the picture, okay? Etc, etc, etc. This helps a lot. So before you say, I don't know this word, just try and ask yourself these questions. Is this a negative meaning word or a positive meaning word? How can I make this out from the syntax, from the context, or from the word itself if it has a prefix that actually helps you do that, okay? But remember, there will always be words that you don't know. But if you learn to use these 3 tips effectively, you will see that you will be able to make out the meaning of most words, if not all. So, well, that's it for today. For more vocabulary, you can follow me on Twitter, like my Facebook page, or add me in Google+. I have added all 3 links down below. If you have any questions, please do leave them down in the comments section. Your feedback is really important, because in this way I know which are your questions and your weaknesses, and I will make videos based on them. So, thank you very much for watching. Good luck with the exam.